Okay, in this video, we're going to continue our discussion of functions. Okay, we're going to do some more things with functions. So there's a lot on this list. That comment shows all the things we're going to cover. So this video may end up getting broken down into more than one video. We'll see. Just look for a part one and a part two if there are those. Okay. So we're going to start with this idea of global constants, and it has to do with something we call scope, when a variable is in scope or when it's not. Okay. So the example I have on here, all of our functions now should have a def main, which defines the main functionality of our program. I call it down here at the bottom. Okay. If I create a variable n here in main, call this function, the n is out of scope. Okay. So when I run it, it tells me I don't know what that is. Okay. So the general rule is that if we define a variable inside of one function, it's only available in that function. So we'll talk here in a minute on ways that we can send information to functions and get information back from the functions. Okay, but that's the general idea here. Okay, so there's something we can do to give global scope, which means all the functions can see it. Okay, so instead of defining it there in main, if I would instead define it outside of all functions. Okay, so this really, and I would put a comment here that this is global scope of global variables. Okay, then I can print out in there and there. Okay, so run that. That should be okay. It's 2 in both places. Okay. I will say in dealing with scope issues, Google Colaboratory is a little weird in that it has memory of other things that have happened or other programs that you have. So you sometimes get inconsistent results. Okay. But in general, this is how it should work in Python, if you were doing it in PyCharm or something else. Okay. So with the global variables, the other thing that we can do is that we can create these global constants. Now, Python does not have the ability to enforce constants where you can't change them. But by tradition in programming languages, everyone I've heard of, if you create a variable with all capital letters, it's assumed to be a constant. Okay, so that a constant meaning something that shouldn't change. So if you're looking at somebody else's code and you see a variable, like, I don't know, you often see things like tax rate. Windows 6. Then that's something you don't want to change. Okay. And we'll often do that if you have a number in your program. Like for the lab, we did Fahrenheit to Celsius conversions. You've got that 5/9 and 9/5. Those look kind of random, and we call those magic numbers. They appear out of nowhere. So often you will make a global constant for that factor. Okay. To make the programs a little more readable. Okay. So that's kind of how that part works. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about then is value returning functions. Okay. So if you have a function, in this case, our function f1 is not a value returning function. It just prints something out. Okay. There are a bunch of value returning functions built into Python. Okay. We've already used the format function. And what format does, it just takes a variable, applies formatting to it, like number of decimal places or whatever, and then returns that as a string. Okay. We've used the input function, which returns a string. We have the int function and the float function, which convert to integers and floats and all that. Okay. So the book talks about another one that we can use. We don't need that for now. That's interesting. And it brings up another point. Get rid of that for now. One of the main reasons that Python has become so big in the world and so popular is all of the incredible libraries that people have created that are available free to include into Python. A lot of those are built into the language, others you have to download. Okay, but the first one we're going to talk about is called the random. Okay, this is built in to the function. We don't need to do anything else but to say import random, and it's there. Okay. And this allows us to create random numbers. Note, random numbers are not really random in a real technical sense. They're based on some seed value, which is based on the time of the computer in milliseconds. So it's possible that you can get the same sequence of numbers more than once. So if you're looking at something super secure, like cryptography or some kind of application like that, or an encryption algorithm, then using the random library on any computer is probably not great. But if you're just doing a game or doing, some kind of analysis where you just want some randomness, they should be fine. Okay. So once we've imported the random number, okay, we're not cooking with our global variables at the moment. In our main, I can go ahead and print out these random numbers. Okay, so I can just print, and there's several different things we can do, but the one we use most often is the random dot rand int, which is a random integer. Okay, it's then going to have a range, say 1 to 100. Okay, note that unlike other things we've done, like in the range function, the 100 is included. So both endpoints are included. So it's not 99, it really is 100 in this case. Okay. So then if I print that, just prints, you can see random numbers. Because the time changes every time, it gives me different numbers. Okay. So again, pseudo random numbers, close enough. Okay. And that's really all you need to know about that. I mean, they're useful if you're doing little games or little whatever you're doing. If you are tired of entering numbers to test and you want it just to grab one at random, then you can certainly use this. And there are other parts of the random library that we may use later. Okay. On any of the libraries, you can go to python.org. There's a documentation section that gives every possible combination of things that you can do. These libraries usually have functions, and then they have sometimes variables built in. Okay. One other thing about the random numbers, if you find that you don't really want random numbers, which is a weird thing, you can set the seed automatically. Okay. Or not automatically, but directly. So if I say random.seed 10, so let's say you want a program that you're going to grab, several random numbers, 4 random numbers. Okay. And you want it to always be that number. Okay. Every time I run it, it's always the same. Okay. So if you're running an application that just for consistency of testing, you want to have the exact same numbers. If you set the random seed to some number, it will go through and create it every time. So the random numbers are created by a formula based on the seed, which is normally some digit of the time, okay, in milliseconds or whatever. Okay. So that's random numbers. So I think I will mark these off as we go, just so we'll feel like we're making some progress. Okay. So you can also create your own value returning functions. And turns out we've already done this in some of our homework problems. Okay, so we're a little ahead of the game here. But the idea is that the function you create, so let me create here, let's do just an F1. Okay. And it's going to return, it's going to return a number or a return a something. Okay. So let's say we just want to return 21 for no reason at all. Okay. And we just do the return statement. Okay. So the return will send it back. So when I get here, this F1 call, the function call, okay, will be replaced in essence with 21. Okay. When I make this call, the way it's currently configured. Okay. So just to make sure we're clear on how the interpreter deals with this. Okay. So when we start our program, it goes at the beginning, the interpreter ignores these because they're comments. It makes note that there's a main function. It makes note that there's an F1 function and does nothing. The first line to execute in this program is here. In fact, if you take this out and you run your program, it does absolutely nothing. Okay. Because it never runs anything, but now it will run. Okay. So notice that I just ran it and nothing, it still did nothing. And the reason being this F1 is now 21, but I'm not doing anything with it, okay? So with the return from your function, you can either print it, so I can print that. That's going to print the 21, okay? Or I think more reasonably, we can say like num is equal to, and we capture that, so we can do other things with it, and then print num, okay? That's also going to do the same thing, okay? So you're normally going to have these value returning functions where you're going to send in information into the program and then return things back, okay? So I think it may be worthwhile. Let me switch over here to the whiteboard. We'll have fun with me drawing with my mouse, which is never a good idea, okay? But we're often going to look at functions, okay, as a big box, okay, that something happens, okay? So something is going to come in to the function. This is our function. And then something may come out, okay? So what comes in, we call parameters, okay? And the parameters that come in, if we have a function call in our main, we could say like F1, send it two numbers, 12 and 34, okay? Then those two numbers become the parameters that come into our function, okay? What comes out of our function is going to be from the return statement, okay? So we're going to have the return keyword on the other end, okay? So the only way to get information into the program is to send it as a parameter, okay? The only way to get information back from the program is to return from the function, okay? So let's take a look at how this looks in code. Okay, so we're going to make make this function. Let's just create. We're going to change this. Okay, we're going to call this an add function. Okay, so our add function is going to take two parameters. Okay, we're going to take num1 and num2 as our parameters, and we're going to return num1 plus num2. This is a silly program. You wouldn't really do that. Okay, so now when I try to use the add function, okay, I have to match up the number of parameters, okay? So I'm going to add, let's say, a 12 and a 34, okay? If I run that, it now gives us the correct answer, okay? So again, back from my picture, add is my box. I'm sending in as a parameter 12 and 34. Again, num1 becomes 12, num2 becomes 34. And then I'm returning their sum, which I'm capturing as the num variable, and I'm printing out num. Okay. So that's how we typically create our value returning programs. Okay. Note that we can return whatever we want. We can return strings, we can return Booleans, we can return floats or integers. It's all okay. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is another one of the libraries that turns out to be pretty useful. Okay. There is some math functionality that's built into Python by default. We've been able to do, our arithmetic, plus, minus, multiplication, divide, exponent, and modulo operators, okay? But in addition, there's this whole math library for your import math, okay? That gives us a whole lot of functionality that we didn't have before, okay? So there's a table in your book, table 5.2 on page 263, okay? And it basically lists all of the functions that are there in the math library. Okay, so it turns out that these are pretty useful to have. Okay, so the way we would do this. So for example, there's a function there's a square root function, okay? And that's math.sqrt, okay? So let's say here, I'm getting this number that I've added together. Let's say I want to print out, okay, the math.sqrt of that number, okay? You run that, it gives you the square root of 46, okay? Or whatever it was I typed in there, okay? So let's see if we can check this. That should give us 5, I'm guessing. Yep, that's 5, okay? So there's a square root, there's all of your logarithmic functions, there's your trigonometric functions, there's sine, cosine, all that stuff. We can do a sine of this if we wanted. Okay, there you go. So lots of math functionalities. Okay. In addition, there are some constants. So we can do math.pi, for example, and that prints pi to as many digits as the computer will allow it to print them to. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty useful things to do, I think. Okay. So I think we're just going to stick with one video and just tough it out. Okay. So the next section talks about how you can store your functions as modules, okay, and import those, create your own libraries, okay, and that's fairly basic. The book gives an example where they create a circle program. Okay, so let's go back and just do that really quick. Get back to here. So I'm going to create a new Google Colab like we always do. Okay, I'm going to call this circle.py. It'll let me do that because it does something different. No, it doesn't like that. Let me kill that and start over again. So I need to go Colab. Yeah, it's these may be weird because of the way it names things since they're a notebook. We'll see if this works. But normally we create a circle.py. Okay. So in this one, we put some comments, but we're going to import math. Okay. And then we can define area where we send it a radius. Then we're going to return math.py times radius squared. Okay. That's all we would have to do for that. Let's see if this allows us to import. So what do I need? That should be saved automatically. Okay, so if I go to this one here, if I import circle, okay, it may give me trouble. Yeah, it doesn't like that. So if I do the circle, is that it once? IPYNB. NB, not NB. Let me do that. Yeah, no, that's not going to work on Colab. But in general, if we were in PyCharm, we would be able to create this circle.py program. Okay. We would be able to then import circle, would look just like that. Okay. And then I could call down here circle, just like the math dot, circle dot area, give it a radius, and that would work. Okay. Again, that's not going to work on Colab. So if we have an exercise with that, that'll be another one we have to do in PyCharm. Okay. Okay, so I've missed something. What if I missed something? Oh, creating the menu driven programs. That's the last thing we're going to talk about. Okay, so most programs that we run have menus, right? There's a reason that we do menus. Okay, so let's talk about creating a menu. Okay, so We don't need any of that. We do need a main. That's all. Okay. So we normally are going to have something like a function to display menu. Menu function. Okay. And again, as I've said in class, your program should, if it's going to print, or it should only print if all it does is print. All this is going to do is print. Okay, we're going to print. Welcome to our program, which is kind of cheesy. You really wouldn't want to say that, but you know, the idea. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put an extra new line there. Don't know if I need it or not. We'll see. \n. Okay, let's say we have three options. Okay, so one is going to be, say, hello. Print. Two is going to be, say, goodbye. Print is going to be, three is exit. Okay. Again, this is a dumb program. Okay. So here, if we display menu, it takes no parameters. It returns nothing. But if we do this, so there's our program. Okay. So once we've displayed it, okay, we need to have a choice. Okay. So we can go ahead back here. Okay. And once we've displayed it, we can say something like input will be an int. So let's do C for choice is equal to int input. I want to put just something like that. Okay, so if I run that, you get the option there. I want to put some spaces there. Then whatever we do, then it stops. Okay, so let me put a space after that. Does that look better? Yeah, then whatever you do. Okay, so I want to put all of this into a while loop, so it keeps going around. Okay, I'm going to say while C is not equal to 3. Okay, which means I'm going to have to default my either ask for an input first, or I could just force it to be equal to 1. Not going to matter. Okay, I'm going to display the menu. I'm going to get my input. Okay, and then I can say if C is equal to 1. Okay, and let's just have a function for these. I'm going to say, I'm going to call the function, because that's typically what you want to do. We're going to call a function here, call it hello. Okay, so I need to go down here, create a hello function. Prints hello. Okay, while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and create a goodbye function. Takes no parameters. Print goodbye. Okay. So if C is equal to 1, do that. If C is equal to 2, call the goodbye function. Okay. I can do an if C is equal to 3, which I don't really want to do anything. So I think I can just add a comment here, because I want to have an else here or print invalid choice. Set of quotes. Okay. is. Yeah, well, that's unhappy. Let's see if it really is unhappy. What doesn't it like? Oh, that's what it doesn't like. Yeah, call it there. Now let's try it. Indentation. My indentation's wrong here. Yep, that's weird. Try it now. See what's happier now. So I've got my if that, dealing with that. Make sure these are all tabs. Else if that, that's a tab. Oh, it actually wants me to do something. So let me do something randomly. There's probably a better way to do that than setting a variable. Yeah, that was the issue. What if I just say continue? That should do it. Okay, let's try it now. See if that works. Okay. So one, oh, it says hello, but it went a little too quick. So we'll have to fix that. Two, it says goodbye. You can see it on the screen there. And three, it exits. Okay. So here you probably want to say input your press enter to continue. Okay, same thing down here, just so it doesn't flip back so quickly. Again, there's a menu. One, say hello. There's hello. Two, say goodbye. There's goodbye. Three, to exit. Okay, now we're done. Okay, so that's the basic idea. Okay, we're going to have a function to display the menu. Okay, and then we're going to display that menu inside of a loop. We're going to get the choice, and then we're going to call a function to do the work based on which of those we're dealing with. Okay, so this has been a long video already. I think for a menu option, I'm going to create another menu about adding a menu to the Fahrenheit Celsius conversion program that we did in lab. Okay, so I will go ahead and do that as a separate video. So a lot to cover there. So make sure if you have questions that you let me know.